It's now my pleasure to introduce Todd Unger, Chief Experience Officer, Senior Vice President, Physician Engagement at American Medical Association, and Dr. Chris Vaughn, President and Chief Strategist at Sequence Consulting. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right, there we go.
My grandmother's Baptist church was very good at that.
Oh.
We're Presbyterian. We don't do that. People might think we're having fun. My name is Chris Vaughn. I was talking to my wife this morning about doing this speech, and she told me, don't try to be charming, witty, or smart. Just be yourself. So my second reaction was, yes, dear, I will do my best. And we've been in business together for 18 years, and we are still married. I don't know if that's true love or thick skin, or after 18 years, there's really much of a difference. In any case, just a quick introduction to myself. I started my career in big strategy and marketing consulting here in Chicago. And in 2001, just discovered a real passion for membership organizations and how to help them grow. So my wife and I left and we founded Sequence Consulting in 2001, focused on helping leading associations transform and find new pathways to growth. And we've been really privileged to work with leading organizations, including the AMA. And I'm thrilled to be here with my good friend, Todd Unger, and share with you some of the great things that have happened there.
Excellent. I'm Todd. I've been here for 2 years at the AMA, much of which I had worked with Chris, Lisa, and the Sequence team on rebuilding our membership experience and restarting our membership growth. And we're going to tell you a little bit about that today.
Perfect.
Chris, you want to?
Yep. So today we really want to tell you a story, and it's a great story. It's a great story of transformation and growth that's happened in a very short period of time at AMA. But just as a way to set it up for you, when we talk to our clients, we've kept hearing the same things over and over again. And the conversation always went like this: things have changed. And nothing new about that. It's not the change itself, but it's the pace of change. It's the rate of change that has made things so difficult. And I don't know if anybody here can relate to that, but things seem to be changing quicker and quicker. And the things that used to work don't seem like they work anymore. And what people used to expect isn't really what they expect anymore. And as we had those conversations, we started calling them the headwinds of change. And people would, for associations, and people would talk about disruptive technology. People would talk about new entrants, even for-profit businesses and specialty associations coming after their membership. They would talk about people being able to directly get what they want in the palm of their hand, right? Rather than having to come through association on top of each other and on top of each other. And yet, in that environment that all of you struggle with, we found some organizations were surviving and some organizations were thriving. And we spent the last year trying to understand what the difference was and researching that. And what we found was that the associations that are really thriving are the ones that were willing to take on the model, right? One thing we heard over and over again was that the low-hanging fruit is gone. You've done all the right things, you made all the right changes, you've updated your member journey, you've redone your membership kit, maybe you've redone the website, and still things seem to be either holding steady or heading in the wrong directions. The associations we found that were really making a difference were the ones that were willing to tackle the big pieces of the model itself. Some of them were acquiring companies for new capabilities. Some of them were going overseas. Some of them were doubling down on the mission. Some of them were really focusing on certain segments of the membership. But in our research, that was the difference between the survivors and the thrivers. And you can read the white paper on our website, but I wanted to talk about AMA today because in our experience, no one has taken on more of those change pillars as quickly or as effectively as the AMA does. And what we really want to talk to you about today is that story of what happened at the AMA. So among the things they've done is they've rethought the royalty model completely. They've rolled out a new group program. They've supercharged the offer. They've really embraced the mission. They've tightened their focus. And Todd and I are going to talk to you, and we're going to show you some examples of what all that stuff looks like. When we first started with AMA, you can hit the next slide, Todd. We have a survey. So before we dig into all of that, we would like to ask you, go ahead and hit it because the questions. You guys know how to do this? You've done it a few times today? That's good because I haven't. So you tell me, just curious to know, if you had to pick one, if forced to pick one, which of the following would be most important to your organization right now? Awareness of the work you do, the member experience, content marketing, lead gen, or member value and affinity offers. So let's just take a minute. Go ahead. Still working.
What do you have to do?
Go back and forward again. You guys have it? Okay. I think we have a winner.
Mm.
Half of you said member experience. Maybe about a quarter said awareness of the work you do. A few people on member value and affinity offers. How many of you wish there was all of the above? Yeah, it's a trick question because it's really all of them. And I think we would both agree that it starts with the member experience, but really all of them have to work together. And this will be a very good story, I think, for all of you on how they've been able to make that happen at the American Medical Association. When we started working with the AMA in 2015, I think you would have found it was like most associations where the low-hanging fruit was gone. They'd done a lot of things right. They'd made a lot of changes and a lot of investments and tried to keep up, and yet we're treading water. Membership was flat. Most physicians were neutral to negative about the association. The largest subsection of physicians had no opinion whatsoever about the AMA, utterly apathetic about the organization. And they'd been doing things the same way for a really long time. And it worked for a really long time until it didn't. And the numbers continued to go down. And it was really time for a radical change. And when we started working with Todd in the AMA, AMA had all the research in the world about physicians, but we weren't sure we really understood them. We weren't sure we really knew who physicians were. So the first question we went out and asked was, what's it really like to be a doctor? And
I'll tell you a little story about that. I came in from the very closely related world of horse racing. So I was well equipped to answer that question. But what I found, and came out of a story, my first couple of weeks at the AMA, I got contacted by someone on LinkedIn and he said, I'm a physician in a large group. None of us are members. We don't feel like you represent us. And so I took that as like a throwdown. I'm like feeling very bold in my first week of work. And I said, I'm going to come see you. And I flew to see this physician and have lunch with him at an airport hotel. In advance of that, he provided me with the first chapter of his book, which I have renamed basically What It's Like to Be a Doctor. And in that, I saw many of the same themes I'm sure that you are familiar with about what physicians are going through these days. And it's tough to be a doctor. These are folks that got in it to make patients better. But boy, there's a lot in the way, right? They have to spend 2 hours on a laptop for every hour of patient care. It takes a half a person just to get the approval from an insurance company. And when the patient goes to the pharmacy, sometimes they can't even afford their prescriptions. All right. These are just a few of the many obstacles that physicians face that make it very frustrating and have led to really high levels of physician burnout. So I really felt this as I read it. I was very eager to show what we could do. And he said to me, you haven't seen the name of my second chapter, which is Why the AMA Must Die. All right. So at this point, thinking maybe I made the wrong choice on an in-person lunch, but I was stuck there at an airport. And so I had to really sit and listen. And what I heard was basically an absence of understanding of what we're doing. It's a pretty straightforward thing. It wasn't, I disagreed with you, what you did in 1965. I remember this. These are other things that come out. But this was, I don't know what you guys are doing. And as I listen to this, I'm saying, we're working on this. We're working on this. And I said, if I could just tell that story in 20 minutes, so I had him for 20 minutes, like everybody, over lunch, I could turn that around and at least make that person go from negative to neutral or even to positive. But you can't really get 20 minutes with everyone. I can't fly all over the country and have lunch in person with everybody that doesn't like the AMA. So how are we going to scale this story? And that is really the kickoff of what I call the digital reboot, because that was the way we were going to bring the story to, let's say, 1.5 million people that I really needed to tell it to. So the first place is a little out of order. I'll backtrack on the second slide, but it is, what is the story? As Chris said, this is an organization, it's 170 years old, been around for a long time, not necessarily as adept as it needs to be at telling the story of what this organization does. And if you would have asked somebody what the AMA is, they might have given you a 48-minute speech that sounded pretty lofty and high level. Or as today, I talked to somebody, and they were like, why would I join the AMA? And they're thinking I'm going to give them reasons that you get a free subscription to the journal and insurance discounts and all this other stuff. That's not what makes people join. Those are incentives that can push them over the edge, but they need a reason to believe. And we had to capture that reason by listening to physicians, students, and residents. What are they looking for from the AMA? And the collection of words that we came up with was the physician's powerful ally in patient care. And every word in that sentence, it's a positioning. I come from advertising and marketing, matters. All right. We know why they're physicians, what motivated them to do this. It's a calling. All right. But with so many things going against them now more than ever, they need somebody in their corner seeing it through. And there are really 4 ways that we provide that. Number 1 is we speak with a unified voice for physicians to all the folks in healthcare that matter. Congress, insurance companies, technology companies, right? We lead the charge on confronting today's chronic epidemics like hypertension, prediabetes, opioids, all right? We get rid of the things that interfere between patients and physicians. And finally, and something people don't know a lot about, is we're working to drive the future of medicine. And that is about a 30-second at most explanation that anybody can give. And we're going to talk about how it's supported on the back end. But number 1, it is that proposition that is going to lead to someone saying, I'm either going to consider a membership or not. You represent me or not. All right. And no amount of socks or T-shirts or journals or whatever can help you make that decision. Those are great to have as your incentives and great tangible benefits, but people need to believe.
And Todd, one of the great insights was how physicians wanted to feel, right? The physicians wanted to feel powerful.
We're gonna talk about that in a sec. Don't jump ahead, Chris. The visual aids are coming. So I told you I was going a little bit out of order. Again, from a marketing standpoint, you always start with the target audience. And so we did a lot of research. Chris had led a whole mapping exercise where we in detail understood the lives and processes from medical student all the way through retired physician. But these types of segments weren't necessarily as predictive as we needed them to be. So we were looking at the difference between one segment and another. Does it say I'm more likely to be a member or not? I always say, like, when you read about digital stories, like the hero stories of digital lore these days are like the person that got $50 million and they iterated on their product over and over again until they found a solution that worked. And I'm like, you just blew through $50 million trying to figure out if you had something someone wanted to buy. That's a really bad process. You need to start from the target audience first and make sure you have that. This is one of my terms I have a love-hate relationship with, this idea of personas, all right? I call them segments in marketing. I find a lot of people misuse the terminology here, and they build these kind of generic profiles of people to get to know them better. Joe drinks beer at 6 o'clock and plays with his kids and all this stuff. And it's not actually predictive, right, of the outcome that you're looking for. What we developed were segments that were based on data. All right. They grew out of the interactions that people were having with our content through our email and through our website. And we came up with a very different segmentation than we had originally mapped out, and one that was associated with membership and engagement. These are 3 of the segments. We call them practice innovators, people that are interested in how do I run my practice better? How do I get paid? How do I keep up with technology in a physician's office? Activists, people that are deeply engaged in our advocacy. And then learners, they're people that are primarily interacting with us around research, clinical data. These are not completely independent, but the overlap is less than you think. And so when you think about going out to engage with someone around advocacy, it's just a fraction of the people in your database. And so what we found was that gave us permission to think very differently about how we program. And I mean that in the broadest sense to each of these target audiences across all the different media that we operate with.
Todd, maybe you could talk a little bit more about how you used the data to arrive at that particular segmentation, because it was quite an extensive process.
Yeah, so we did start with what we had. We're very scrappy. And we started by analyzing the things that people were clicking through on email and categorizing all of the keywords that were in those emails to figure out what an approximation of the interest was. And that was the first cut at that. And then we began to look at interactions around the website. We started, and then an email list, basically, of people we had who subscribed to our advocacy-related content. And so we had a primary set of data that was our own. And then with the sequence team's help, we actually used an outside data modeling firm to see if we could take that up. And we increased the size of that kind of profiled group of people about 6 times. And then we've since gone back and verified this as we've gotten more of our website oriented toward kind of feeding the machine of understanding, again, what people want and then tailoring our correspondence with them and our content. So it did grow out of firsthand data, and then we just kept improving it from there. But we could see the results in response rates. So we just did something last week, advocacy-related issue. We sent that to members and non-members, and we sent it to people that were activists and not activists. And you can see in the open rates, they're 2 times what they are if you go to the right segment of the audience, click-through rates the same way, and conversions. So again, somebody on my team asked me, and I thought it was very funny when I was early in this, basically, isn't that wrong to talk to different people in different ways? And I'm like, no, that is marketing. Welcome. So you don't need to go out to people that aren't interested in advocacy and talk to them because they're not even going to open it. They're probably going to unsubscribe. So that's a key learning for us, and one that became much more predictive about how we do it. We still have segments like students and residents where there are institutions that wrap around those particular segments. Seniors is another one that's popped up for us. So I don't generally look at demographic stuff as much, but in those cases, it does matter. Now it was time to start thinking about actual marketing. But before we could do that, we had a lot of work to do to rebuild the foundation of a subscription marketing engine. And a lot of folks, I don't know how many, we still use direct mail a lot. Digital marketing had not been in use 2 years ago, except email, but not the true kind of digital marketing that I was used to. And if you think about it, you're running a subscription business, and you need to have all of the bells and whistles in there in your funnel to be able to handle that. So before we could actually turn that top of the funnel audience generator on, we really needed to fix the stuff at the bottom of the funnel there. So we spent a lot of time that first year rebuilding our sign-up process, putting in place all of the necessary testing and analytical tool set in place to make sure people could actually get through the sign-up process, find their name, match. There are all these things you have to do to prove you're a physician or a student or resident in that process. And it was such a leaky bucket, I couldn't believe sometimes we actually had people like signing on. Our login had to be fixed. The account management center had to be rebuilt. These are like changing the tires on your car multiple times. Like, it's just not very much fun, but huge percentage improvements in conversion rates because of that. And once we could do that, then we started to look to engage at the top of the funnel, bringing in a whole kind of new set of people into the fold. That is really where we get to this idea of marketing the experience. Again, we didn't really have a strong experience, I would say, to begin with, except for the core audience of folks like you who came last week to Chicago to participate in policymaking. Let's say that's 2,000 people out of about 250,000. The other experience people had is they got an invoice in the fall and probably another invoice the next fall. They're not interacting a lot with us. And so we had to take the experience to them because we don't have a lot of live events. We really have 2 huge ones a year and some regional stuff. But they're just picking up passively what we're doing through press releases or an article they might have read or something that a friend might have said. And we had to change that and take that experience into our own hands. And the way that we did that is through content and rebuilding our digital publishing platform. So we started with our website, which I don't know how kind of shape that yours are in, but when I arrived there, we had just launched a new site, but it was more, I would say, of an association site, a resource, more static. There was some news, but the architecture of the site did not really deliver on what a content marketing-based organization needed to. And so we had to rebuild that site in the fashion of more like a New York Times, more like a Washington Post, more like a medical information provider, with the specific objective of increasing our penetration among our target audience. I'm not trying to be as large as the New York Times. I just want to reach as many of the 1.5 million people as often as I can.
Todd, how many members were coming through the website when you first got it?
So the real answer to that question is we did not know. So because it wasn't being run necessarily as a publishing site. And so it took me the better part of a year to figure that out. The site had been knitted together over the course of 10 years, had 3,000 microsites, 42 different other things, not uniform, hard to tell who was coming when. So we now know how many people are coming to the site. It's over 1 million unique users a month. We're up nearly double from when we launched the site back in November of last year. So that is what you can do with a well-designed site that is up to date in terms of SEO, navigation, and content and programming. So that's my background, whether it's horse racing or skateboarding or whatever it is, there are rules of the road. And then you have to figure out how to actually get people to the site because they don't just naturally arrive. Yeah, so we're lucky that is in good condition, an excellent condition. That's a huge asset of the AMA that we have those folks on file. I'd say the big change for us is appending information to that, right? So it's a lot more than a name and address. You can't really segment on that. All right, so when you start appending behavior-based stuff, what are people interested in looking at? And then marketing based on those segments on and off the site. That's where the power of this comes from. Lucky that the folks have treated it like the asset it was, and I have that to work with.
And that included email interactions, right? That included website behavior, that included journal behaviors, all of the interactions you could possibly capture over the last couple of years you've now captured.
Yeah.
Such that you can segment every member on the database now based on their behaviors and interests.
And one of the other additional things that we worked with Chris and his team on is we layered another segmentation on top of that, which is basically look based on engagement. You can see people that are very highly engaged and likely to renew without a lot of additional resources. On the other end of that are people who have never engaged with you at all and are unlikely to. And we're not going to focus a lot of time and energy on attracting them because it is in that movable middle that we really poured our resources into. And again, that was a different way of thinking about how to spend our money and time and attention. And so the multiple kind of layers on top of that, plus the behavioral ones that led us to what we were doing. So now that we had like a working site basically that did the job, we do have like you external folks coming to the site. And then we have a very strong set of internal stakeholders, our House of Delegates, the people that come to our annual meetings. They expect to be able to navigate to those things, search policy, do all of that stuff. So we have a big job to do and multiple audiences to satisfy with the website. But the main opportunity that I saw, having come from an unrelated field that was in e-commerce, but also had a 125-year-old horse racing media property attached to it, was the power of connecting content and, in this case, commerce, subscription marketing. So for us, we had a lot of content that was being generated. It just wasn't being done in the way that attracts modern digital audiences. And so we really had a little bit of a restart on that. And we started where you should, which is where is there demand for content in this area that lines up with what your capabilities are. And so that starts with looking for what are people searching for? What are the top search engine terms where we excel in building content? We made that list and we started focusing on those areas. I talked about physician burnout up front. That is a white hot area and continues to be for the past 2 years for us. We produce a lot of content in that area. We have a whole educational series about addressing the systemic problems that cause physician burnout. It's not about, hey, doc, go get a massage, right? The system is messed up and you got to fix it. We have developed all of that. We need to get more people involved and engaged in doing that. We've got assessment tools. And so our job was really to get people to raise their hands and say, I'm interested in that. This was one of our first big successes. It's an article about physician burnout. And I would say sometimes in the past, they were not the most sexy titles that we could ever come up with, but we started changing. Physician burnout, it's not you, it's your specialty. Our standard article in the old days was getting about 2,000 page views. It was in a side thing and a different subdomain and all this crazy stuff. It wasn't getting promoted. This article immediately took off, and then we used support because we were seeing organic traction. It's now way past 400,000 page views. All right, so one article can do more than we're probably doing in a month in terms of traffic. And what we didn't expect was it to drive membership, all right? And it did it at about 30% less in terms of a CPA than any ad we'd ever run. So that was like light bulb on, I think we should do more of that. I'm always big on that. And we started producing much more of this style of content. and thinking of ourselves again, not just as we're not just writers and researchers. My team are content marketers. All right. And our job is to identify leads for the mission-based areas of the AMA. So the more people I can get to look at physician burnout, read things about hypertension, find out how to stop the opioid epidemic, get involved in advocacy. That's my job, is to say, raise your hand and sign up for something, download something, give me your email address, help me identify you in the category that then allows me to correspond with you through email and on the site in a much more responsive way.
And Todd, maybe you can talk about how you got the organizational line behind that, because content's created in lots of different places around the AMA.
Yep. Before I go on, did you have a question? Hmm? I think it goes back to the segmentation. We can't do everything, and we're not competing with specialty societies. They have a very specific role that they're doing very well. We do our thing really well. And what we've identified is those areas that people are interacting with us. This is a different area than the specialty would do. We're operating on an advocacy level at a different way than other people are. When we go to Washington, we're representing all states and all specialties, and all those folks are part of our House of Delegates. So that's the way that we view it, not necessarily competition, but it is unique to us and what corresponds to what we're producing as well. But there was a bit of back to kind of Chris's question about how do we get the rest of the organization on. It was the second organization row that I've worked on where content marketing was not a term used. So same in horse racing. People are like, what are you talking about? It's like, just because you write an article doesn't mean someone's going to read it. That content has to be marketed, and you have to bring people to the site, just like the New York Times does or the Washington Post, by reaching across all social platforms, promoting that article, following best practices about titles, making sure that your stuff shows up in search. Because that's where any site, half your traffic's always going to come or more from people in Google, looking up physician burnout. We looked it up. How were we performing on that term? It was terrible. All right. Like other people, entities out there were really kicking our butts because we weren't doing it right. And so we just took the play from them. We'll produce it and we'll do it the right way. And this kind of proved that we could do it. And then we took that model across all of the top areas that we're working on. And that's really what's driven the site, and just getting much more familiar with how do you identify an article or something you produce that's getting enough traction that it should be supported. And then we target that based on our segmentation on Facebook or through Twitter, Instagram, to get more people that are going to respond to it onto the site.
Question. This is largely a marketing session rather. The last association, a lot of this services, first runs for Chicago Association of Realtors, commercials. We have a global, and buy-in staff will one that will experience once they're on.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to know, and maybe this will derail on the session. Curious, how did you work? I'm going to step on the senior vice president's toes by saying we're not going forward on this. Like that, ideally,
yeah.
We all work blocks. And also,
yeah. The nice thing is everybody wants more exposure to the things they're working on. And if you can actually show them the metrics that support that, let me tell you, the folks that are producing all the work in physician burnout, we're pretty thrilled. So once you bring on, that was one of my early guinea pigs, was my colleague that runs that whole group that said, I'll sign up and I'll help you do that. And he'll devote the right resources to doing that. And then everybody else is, I would like that too. So that helped a lot. Now, there were impediments in the way that were structural. So when I got there, there was no digital publishing team. So how do you run a website without a digital publishing team? Because the content person was in marketing. I had a UX person doing kind of web design. IT people had the analytics person. It was just spread all over the map. And so that was one of the early proposals was, we're not going to get any traction in this area until we build a team. And now that team has really taken shape, and it just continues to evolve. And over time, we've been able to bring more people on board when they realize it's all upside for them.
I think Todd's being a little bit modest about that too. There a lot of work went into, I think, bringing those people along, convincing them that we weren't trying to move their cheese, right? We weren't going to try to tell them what to do, right? We weren't going to try. We really needed the content and we needed to work together for everyone to win. And it did take time, but I'd say it's been hugely successful and everyone now sees the benefit of having their stuff promoted because they want people to interact with all the great things they're doing. So it wasn't easy.
How do you make sure that being developed aligns?
Uh,
Because we struggle with
Great question.
content. I want mine out
Yep.
there. Read explaining why you can't do that.
Yeah, that's a great question because you have limited amount of resources. So how are you going to expend that? To a certain extent, we had to sell people on this model of programming and show them that it can work. So we did the research and we had the data. And you know what? If your article only generates 400 page views, like I can't change that. We're not a mouthpiece for individual business units. We are here to deliver on the impact of the AMA and express its brand strategy. And that's how we use the publishing platform. And so we say to folks, like, we want to promote your stuff, build things that are going to do that job.
And that's a tectonic shift in model. When we talked in the beginning about being willing to take on the model, that was one of the huge shifts is, right? It's not the role to be the community newspaper for the association. It's about pressing the organization forward. And it certainly helped when you rack up the wins doing that. But making that philosophical shift, I think, was one of the real turning points.
Yeah. This is speaking of racking up the wins. We were doing a separate kind of, I would call it more of a brand campaign, for lack of better words, that was running in a different group. But we really needed our own campaign for membership. And going back to that original thing we talked about, where we know the problems that people don't know what we're doing, they don't understand how relevant we are today, and the tangible things that are coming out of this organization, we started piecing together something that we called Membership Moves Medicine. And it was built on a library of proof points. And I just want to say the interesting thing about this is we were, again, very scrappy about this. We worked with Chris and his team to assemble a little freelance group of creatives, and we started building this campaign. The hard part wasn't necessarily in the creative. It was canvassing our entire organization and listening to what they were doing and what they were achieving, and then putting that, I call it like almost through a translator into like normal persons speak, right? So that people could identify with what the wins were. All right. And then we could take these out based on the segmentation that we built to talk. If somebody's interested in physician burnout, we can talk to them about what we've done. If somebody's interested in practice innovation or advocacy, we can take a message out that said, hey, did you know that the AMA saved you $500 million a year by blocking that merger? I'll bet you didn't know that. All right. And over out there in the wilds of social media, the words, I had no idea, echo through that, right? All right. So this was really stage one of doing this. And again, when you talk about bringing people on board, they finally saw that membership was not some separate entity, and membership experience was not some separate thing. It's built on a foundation of what the organization's doing. And I'm going to promote and bring members on board by talking about your wins. So win more.
And they would come to you. I want a proof point, right? I have a proof point too. Yeah.
So that was I would say that's been a big sea change for people to see that those things are the one and the same. Mission and membership go hand in hand. And we've proven that through now being able to measure this. All right. So it's not a soft kind of brand message. We did this, and I can see exactly how many people joined as a result. One thing we didn't expect to come out of this was something that we began to explore as a complement to it, which was not just talking about what the AMA was doing as this entity, but really telling that story through our members. Now, all of the people that you've seen in this presentation up to date, including the people on this page, are actual physicians, students, and residents. Before I came here, most of what we did was the use of stock photography. It was a real thorn in everyone's side. When you go out and talk to members, they're like, why are you using that? That's not me. And so we decided to begin experimenting with this. And just by chance, I connected with a Getty Images photographer in Chicago who photographs celebrities when they come, like Pitbull. He was here like last week. He's also photographing our members. All right. And so this began as an experiment. And we were looking at, wow, look at these people, how great they are looking and how they represent us. And then I had someone come in and pick up her photo. And she said, when I look at this picture, I feel really powerful. And for me, that is the moment that the light bulb went on, because you go back to our strategy that we are a powerful ally for physicians in patient care. And if we can, through our marketing, through the resources we provide, all of the content that we produce, make physicians feel more powerful in an era when control is being taken away from them, then that's a big job we're getting done. And so this has been an especially powerful statement for our members to bring them into the campaign, make them a part of it, tell their stories. We've built an entire platform around Membership Moves Medicine. That is our hashtag. Right now, I don't know, did you notice the 40-foot banners hanging from the ceiling with our members' faces on them? All right, let me tell you what, that gets people really excited when they see that. All right, that's something that's never really been done before. And the other benefit of it is that really for the first time, we're putting the member's face all over the AMA. And so if your only experience of meeting a member might have been at the House of Delegates, which is not something that everybody at the AMA necessarily goes to, right? You're seeing them in the hallways, in all our promotional materials, on our annual report, across big displays, on video displays, on our common 47th floor where all of our conference rooms are. This has really brought the face of the member and their stories to the rest of the organization. This is just one thing. I'm going to show you a little video about how we put that together too. But this is another big thing that we picked up from the Sequence team as they've looked at the affinity programs, member benefit programs across many different organizations. Adding one more discount, not going to bring in a lot of members. Really, it's about paring those down to the ones that have a very strong fit and can break through the clutter with all those other things. We took a new look at ones that were in our portfolio, rebranded our member benefits campaign, and started building out ones that make a lot of sense for the lifestyle of students, residents, and physicians.
And there were a couple pieces to that. Before, the program looked pretty much like any other affinity program, a semi-random basket of discounts, most of which people didn't use because you could get a better one somewhere else. The most popular one actually was a discount on Mercedes-Benz, which was really nice and very popular, but built zero loyalty, right? Because people would join for the discount and then they would quit. So we actually decided to really start over in terms of our thinking, right? That they didn't need us to offer discounts on shipping and rental cars. They needed us to offer ways to help them deal with burnout. They needed us to deal with ways to help deal with student loans, the real problems that they had that were in line with the AMA's mission, and solutions that were uniquely available from the AMA that built member value. And to get those deals, we had to change the way we went out to potential partners and stop looking at affinity as a potential source of revenue. Revenue's nice, but we get revenue from renewals. So member value drives renewal. We can prove that. Renewal drives revenue. And we got the CFO on board with that, right? That if we can redo the program and offer a better deal to potential partners, they'll give us the kind of things we need to make members thrilled and really feel the value from it. It was really groundbreaking, and you've had some amazing results from it.
Yeah, and we've had a couple of recent additions to this that really tie into our strategy. So one of my favorite ones, I don't know if you went to the Headspace booth, like physician burnout, obviously a big problem. So now our members get 2 free years of Headspace meditation app with their membership. That's been very appealing. We've signed up thousands of people for that already in its first 2 weeks. The other partnership is with Laurel Road. They're a financing company. And so obviously student debt, medical student debt with these young folks emerging from medical school, sometimes $300 or more $1,000 in debt is a big deal. And so for us to be able to save them money that way is a huge value. So we're looking for things that are not generic, that grow out of the needs of our audience. The last thing I just want to show you was a little bit more about the campaign itself. I thought you'd get a kick out of this video, and just make sure it's cranked up. Membership Moves Medicine tells the story of what the AMA is doing for patients and physicians.
We are capturing real members, getting those photos, and we're also sharing their personal stories on how they are moving medicine.
The creative direction that we came up with was if we photograph doctors like we photograph celebrities, we put them in a really powerful and unique position.
The poses make me feel powerful. They really do make me feel like a superhero. My experience with Members Move Medicine has been both humbling and also inspiring. People think I'm fierce.
Just the idea of having a shoot where these physicians and students and residents are became an important part of their experience. And having this picture of yourself actually is a digital currency for us to actually show the world how heroic they really are.
It's about the individual member. They're real people with real stories. It's so inspiring. These are the people that are really moving
I
medicine.
think the AMA is taking a totally different tactic to membership. And I really like that they're highlighting real members, real people, real physicians.
I feel proud. I feel honored.
These doctors are doing great work on behalf of their patients and on behalf of the AMA, and they deserve the recognition. So excellent. Just in closing, everybody wants.
We're going to talk about groups for a minute, weren't we?
Oh, we
Yeah.
yes, we were, Chris.
Let's do that. One of the things that we learned talking about being willing to change the model and rethink about membership differently, in the years ahead, more than 50% of physicians will be employees of major health systems. That's a whole new world for physicians. And AMA membership was really built around individual or small practice physicians and offering them the kind of benefits and experiences they need that an employed physician gets, right, from their employer. So how do we make membership relevant to these large health systems? There was a group membership offering, but it was small. There really wasn't much to it. A little discount.
More of a discount.
More of a discount than anything else, and not many organizations took them up on it. So we went and we talked to the CEOs of these major health systems and asked them what did they want, not just for their physicians, but for their organizations. What could AMA do for them? And it was eye-opening. We were able to come up with a basket of benefits, not just for the members. All physicians would become members, but the institution, as an institutional member, would have access to certain things that were really important to the leadership of the organization. Access, for example, to AMA's advocacy team so they know what's going on and their voices get heard. Access to burnout tools, for example. We'll come in, we'll do an assessment of your organization. We'll do burnout training for your team. That's a big deal, right? Physician recruitment and retention is a big deal for these health systems. We had ways to help them recruit. We had ways to help them promote all the great things they're doing in their health system using the AMA's channels, all the thought leadership innovation they're building. These are things that got these CEOs excited and willing to join. And yes, we offered them a discount for members to get the AMA members to join. But we got them excited about what AMA could do for their organization. It was a huge shift in thinking about membership. It's not just one-to-one. It's AMA to the field of medicine itself. And the group membership program, it's now called the
Health System Engagement.
Health System Engagement, which is more accurate description of it, has been hugely successful as well.
Yeah. So just in closing on success, I'm a very metrics-driven person. My team is too. We doubled our rate of growth. Not grow. I wish we doubled our membership, but I'll get a statue for that. But we've doubled our rate of growth is much faster. Our acquisition costs are lower. Our members are happier and more engaged. Retention is up. And so far, chapter 2 of that book has not been written. So I'll call it a win. Thanks very much for having us.